Greetings and welcome from TBILISI, Georgia. It's midnight. Well, it's about 5 minutes after midnight here on a Saturday night. Now, I guess Sunday. I've never understood why we changed the name. I always wish it would be Saturday all the way until morning, the actual light. But, it's a convention. We live with it. It's still night. Well, greetings. I am here. And what am I doing here? Well, I am desperate to get to my deadline of July, I wish, January 31st. And that is coming up. And the good news is we have more money to report. And the clock is ticking. But I see there's a few people watching. Greetings, Gamar Joba from Georgia. And I decided to come on a little later because I got the energy for it. I don't know how long I'm going to spend, at least an hour, maybe longer. If things seem interesting to me, I will stay a bit longer. But let me give you a bit of a recap of where we are. We're doing good, but we've still got a ways to go. So let's look at the big board. What's going on? Just a reminder, if someone's just tuning in and doesn't know what's going on, I do. I'm trying to get my library from Haines, Alaska, on the other side of the world, literally 12 time zones apart. That is the other side of the world, all the way to Tbilisi, Georgia. We got our own time zone here. We don't even do daylight saving time. We just stay the same time all year, which is kind of cool. I like that. But greetings in Hawaii. Deborah, good to see you. And we are trying to get the money for it. Now, it was a fairly good amount, small by today's standards. Who could possibly live on $12,000 a year? But $12,000 is the amount quoted to me from the people at the Lasare Freight and Shipping Company about how much it would take to get my stuff from Alaska to here. There are some places where I'm not sure of the amount. There are some places where the amount could go up, like if I wait too long on the airplane tickets, the amount will go up. I'm also waiting for, I got to see what the customs are. The customs could break me, but that's all right. If I wait until everything is perfect, I'll never get there. And what I'd like to do, once I get to 10,000, I think we'll get the other 2,000, and I'll feel confident enough to start really seriously looking at the tickets, because I need to buy those soon, because I'm under a new kind of pressure because I've found out it'll take 3 months for the freight to get from Alaska all the way to here. So that's like a big deal. And the other pressure on the other side is my residence permit officially ends in July. So what that means is around the same time I need to get it renewed, that'll be coming. But I am confident that I'll get a new residence permit, but I'm not 100% sure. And the people at Lasare said it'll be much better for you going through customs with the resident permit. So because I can't 100% set on that and say, yes, I will get it renewed, I need to get it here beforehand. If for some reason I didn't, I'm still good here because I can stay for a year, step out of the country, go to Armenia, and I'm good for another year. It's a strange situation, one I don't mind. But what numbers? Where are we? Well, we've got good news. More has come in, and let's look at the other camera. So here's what's going on. Let me go over here and point it out. So we ended. Okay, so we need $12,000. We need $6,000 for the freighter costs, and we've got that. We've got another $2,000 we need for the barge costs, and we've got that. And we've been trying to raise the next $2,000 for the truck and train and customs cost in Georgia once it gets to the actual dock. And that's another $2,000. And then there's a final $2,000 for the plane travel tickets, again, halfway around the world. So we had a guy named Knut give us $50, and then Floris Bolmer, who's from the Netherlands, just put in $30 over in the GoFundMe site. So that means to get to the $2,000 of the truck and train and customs money, we only need $720. As soon as I get that, I can get my tickets. And then we need the other $2,000. So the amount is $2,720, which is a lot better than $12,000. I think people are tuning in more now just to see either me go crazy or to see, are we doing it, Bern? Yeah, we are. And so what I want to mention is, yes, we have the links below. You can go to the GoFundMe page, which is great if you need a tax-deductible receipt. And hey, if you were going to give money to someone that's like just an organization, give it to me. And I'm not saying this because I'm greedy. I don't get any of this money. This all goes to the people moving this stuff. I mean, literally, I'll probably spend more than that, and I'll be broke when I get back. So, yeah. But the other thing is, there's the PayPal and the GoFundMe. So use either of those. Help me to get to where I'm going. I see it. It's in sight. So let's do that. And the other thing to remember is if you give $50, like Knut did, Knut will also get 50 music files of Georgian music, rare, hard to find Georgian music. And we'll play a little bit of that in just a moment here. And other people who gave in the last go round, was that last night? I think so. Stephanie, Alec, Tayo all gave $50. Caleb gave another 100. Notice I said the word another. You can give more than once. Nick gave $100, and who is that? Richard Lund went back for more and gave $200. So there are people who are saying, like, yeah, I recognize that this is something that's important that needs to be done, and if you realize that, you should think about giving. And so let's play some of that Georgian music while you're there. If you have any questions or just want to say hello from wherever you are, go ahead and do that now. And let's listen to that. We just heard 16 Horsepower, which is an American Gothic band from the 90s, early aughts. I love their music, and I love American Gothic music, which has this kind of old, creaky sound, but it's kind of a dark take on American traditional music. Let's listen to this strange thing. This has only lasted a minute. And it was this, some Georgian girl just got out of her car. Her friend took a video of her just like doing a traditional Georgian style dance next to her car on the street. And I put to it, there was some music she was dancing to. I didn't like it as much. So I found this weird Georgian electronic music, doing a traditional song with these kind of funky electronic instruments. Let's listen to that, and I'll be right back. And this is the kind of music, I put the complete version of this on one of the files, so of the music, but I just have the short clip. I really like this. Just this girl just breaks into a traditional Georgian dance, which has very specific kinds of moves. Watch it. I really wish I had her dancing for another 2 minutes of the song, because there's just something really infectious about what she was doing, breaking into dancing. It's a wonderful thing. And that's one of the things that got me thinking about Georgia in the first place. I would run into these videos. We've got one coming up here of just teenagers and young people just doing traditional dancing and singing and such. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. And a friend of mine was giving a lecture tonight on Heidegger, the big subject, in Georgian, which I didn't understand what he was saying, but I wanted to hang out with him and talk a bit afterwards, and so we did. But there was a guy I was talking to, and another guy who was a kind of a young Georgian philosopher, and we were talking about the effect of the smartphone and all this stuff upon people. And yes, indeed, it's having an effect here. So another reason I need to get my stuff from Alaska to here, so I have more ammunition, not only to share with my Georgian friends, but to share with you on the channel. So think about that. Meanwhile, if anyone has any questions or thoughts out there, obviously I can just drone on and on and on. I worked in radio for 10 years. I'm good at that. Just like I can go on and on. I'm working on my 2-part Taylor Swift videos right now, and I'm going to put one on here on the anadromist and one on the anadrome. And I want people to go over to the anadrome channel. And so the first one will be called Who is Taylor Swift? And that'll be on the Anadrome channel. And the other one will be called Taylor Swift, Goddess, Witch, or Christian. And it's funny how I'll get people, when they see that I've done that, they'll say, oh, she's, certainly not a Christian, not a goddess. Maybe she's a witch. But, you'll have to wait and see what I say. Or you can get an advanced look and go over to my Substack, look for the Anadromist on Substack, and I've got the 2 full-length essays there. And they're meaty, they're long. So what else are we doing? Should I play more music? Yeah, let me play one more of these Georgian things. And keep in mind, this is the kind of music that I have put into, I've got 4 packs of 50 each of Georgian music. So if you give $50, I give you 50 files. If you give 100, I give you 100, all the way up to 200. If you give me $500, sorry, you'll only get 200. But, we have to do anything. This is a piece, the central female in the middle of this is a girl named Mariam Eliashvili. And they're doing a piece. This was when she was in the equivalent of high school here. And she's sitting with some friends. And what I like about this is just some Georgian teenagers sitting around. They're playing a song. And let's listen to it. It's about 4 minutes long. I'll be back after that. And then we will discuss some more. Think about questions. Let me know where you're from. Here we go.
Hermos gote do
There you have it. Just some kids playing. That's what I love. That's what I love about Georgia, is just stuff like that. And it doesn't happen all the time. One of the mistakes I made was watching all these videos and thinking I would be seeing this all the time. But it happens enough that to make me put a smile on my face. So Laura just asked a question about all the stuff with AI photos of Taylor Swift. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send Laura an invitation to come on the channel, since this is on StreamYard, and we'll go from there. So she'll come here and we can talk about this. As she points out, this is a huge issue in America, and I think it will be a huge issue all the way around. So I've just sent that off, Laura, and yeah, let's talk about that for a little bit. You don't have to hang out, as long as you want. I'm here at least for an hour, maybe longer. Depends on you folks. If you got questions or thoughts. Hello, Andre. Greetings in Albania. And yes, we are here. We are making money, which is good. So we now are officially at $9,280. And if I can round that up to 10,000, then I can go ahead and feel confident enough that the other 2,000 will come in, and that I can get my plane ticket as soon as possible, because time is moving. Like I said, I've got a problem where my problem is that I have this new bit of pressure. I thought I was working with the freighter taking about a month and a half, maybe 35, 40 days to get across the oceans. Now it's looking like 3 months, and I have seen people actually sending stuff saying it took 3 months. So that's like, whew, that's a long time. One thing I've been thinking of, since I'm going to come back from, once I put my container on in Alaska, hopefully in the middle or before the end of March, probably in the middle of March if I can, as early as possible is the point. I need to get there, which is why I need to get the tickets soon. Pressure, pressure. But one thing I was thinking was that I might have a bit of time to stop in 1 or 2 places on my way back through Alaska, maybe 1 or 2 places in America, maybe 1 or 2 places in Europe. if you want me to come and talk somewhere or do some sort of small group meeting or give a lecture or anything like that, you would have to think about it and come up with enough money to make it worth my while, because as soon as a plane drops in America, that adds a bunch of money to my expenses, because they don't like you doing that. They don't mind if you do it in a day or two, but they hate it if you just suddenly start adding all these stops for, stop a week here or whatever, 2 days there. So, but it is something I was thinking about. If anyone, I don't get out of Georgia all that often. So if you want me to come and talk to somebody or someplace, think about that, and you might be able to convince me to do it. So what else have we got here? Got a few people watching. That's good. I don't feel so lonely. Laura might come on in a bit, and we're going to talk about the AI pics of Taylor Swift and certainly other people. This has been going on for a while, and we're going to do that. And we're going to go ahead and send in some money if you feel like it. If you're just one of the people who have already been supporting, thank you for coming. And I feel blessed that I've gotten this far, and I feel the rest of the money is out there. I'm trying to remind my other friends, and I find Facebook is less enthusiastic than it used to be. I remember the day when I could get a certain amount of money collected from Facebook, but now I think part of it is that when you're on Facebook, eventually you become more abstract. You become little hearts and thumbs up to people. You become like, oh yeah, Bern's still there. You become less a part of their daily life, especially being as I am, half a world away from Alaska, quarter of a world away from New York City, where I used to live. I still have friends I keep up with. I even have friends that I keep up with from my Jesus People days in California back in the early 1970s, which I find really fascinating. And what time is it? About 28 after here in Tbilisi, 28 after midnight. And that's how we are. We will talk. I'm waiting for Laura before I start talking about the Taylor Swift stuff, because I think that'll be interesting. And I don't want to just start rambling. Okay. Do you folks have any other questions that I could handle right away? Or where else are we from? We have Albania, we have Wisconsin, we've got Hawaii passed through. Oh, Dejin, question. Didn't see that. What are your predictions for 2024? Any hope, fear, doubt, optimism? Yeah. Well, all of the above, hopes and fears. 2024, we're already there for one thing. It's already showing itself quite well. It is going to be, I hate to say this, 2024 is already showing its head to be pretty intense. And we've got the ongoing war in Ukraine. We've got all the political tension in America, which will come to the Texas question in a minute. We've got all the same stuff going on in Europe, all sorts of tensions and stuff going on in Europe. We've got whatever the heck is going on in China. We've got economies and governments changing in all sorts of parts of the world. It is not going to be pretty. And I think that, I'm an American. The American elections are going to be a mess. And whatever, this whole thing with Texas and the Texas border crisis, if you don't know about it, you should, because that's going to get some news for us. And then there are questions of AI. And speaking of that, we've got Laura coming on. Hello, Laura.
Hey there.
Greetings in Wisconsin.
Yep.
I came on a little later tonight because I figured out I might get some people in there Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. So here we are. And how have you been?
I've been doing pretty good. We had an extreme cold here, and now it's gotten extremely warm for winter. So we've been
having
fluctuating.
Yeah, Yeah, we would get that in Alaska all the time, but we were right on the water, on the Pacific Ocean,
Gotcha.
on the fjord, and
Mm.
so we would get the ocean water would stay about 40 degrees all year,
Hmm.
45 in the summer, but 40, which is downright chilly. The river water was like 34 degrees or 36 degrees
Wow.
all year. And for those of you who speak Celsius, that's about 1 degree river water and about 5 degrees ocean water. But that's still warm enough to keep it from the water doesn't freeze. I only saw some ice on the water once in 22 years.
Wow.
So hold on. I feel a sneeze.
Bless you.
See,
2 times.
3. Can I go for 4? 6 is my record. Someone was telling me they had someone relative who went for like 20 or something. I was kind of like, good grief.
Turns into a cartoon.
This person should never take hallucinogenic drugs because that I know from like 6. I'm just like afterwards, like what, you know. So so yeah. How's the music world going?
It just keeps on going on. It's I don't know. I just feel like in this winter time, I'm just kind of dead right now. Like for whatever reason, at the end of January, entering into
January in
February.
the north is cold, and the way I tell people here, for me, like today, it was for Georgians, it was cold. It
Hmm.
was 2 degrees,
Yeah.
but those are 2 Celsius degrees, which to me is like, oh, that's just wimp material.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
now it's like, it's so funny. People are in like shorts, it's probably like
exactly.
35
Yeah.
Fahrenheit, and people are walking around in shorts going to the grocery store, you know.
There was a guy, part of the Tlingit tribe in Alaska. I came in one day. It was about 33 degrees outside. So that's about 1 degree for you Celsius people.
Hmm.
Comes in, he's wearing gym shorts and short sleeve shirt, kind of a husky native guy. And I say
Yeah.
to him, Lee, what are you wearing? And he goes, well, it's not freezing.
Hmm.
Technically, he was correct. But
Yeah.
really, I think that there's a psychological effect, and I want to do a video on this at some point on my Georgian Crossroads channel, because people say, the Celsius system is so much better, and I'm going, no, it isn't, because
Mm.
Celsius is great if you're water, but if you're a human being, what's the difference between 34 and 28? It's
Yeah.
like it's not that big a deal.
Hmm.
0 Fahrenheit is truly cold, and
Yeah.
100 Fahrenheit is truly hot. And
Definitely.
to me, that just feels like human temperature.
Yeah.
So people say, yeah, but it's more rational. It's just like, no, I want to know how I feel.
Yeah, and you like the expression to say, "Oh, it's gonna be like 100 degrees." There's something more personable about it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's just that I know in America, people are saying, it's going to be 10 degrees. I know that's like going to be a chilly day,
Yeah.
especially if they say it's going to be 10 degrees and windy. Then I go like, ooh, we're getting cold now. And if
Yeah.
someone says it's 0 with a minus 45 wind chill or something, I'm going like,
Hmm.
yeah, this is serious weather now.
Yeah. We had about a week of really cold weather just uh probably 2 weeks ago now, and we just got hit with a blizzard, and it was great cuz I love when we get that beautiful coating of snow,
Right.
on all the roads, and we even had, school was canceled and stuff. I'm happy that they still do that in some places. Give them like a true snow day, cuz there's a ton of places even in this state where if there's too much snow on the road, they just make all the kids do virtual school. And it's like,
Oh, terrible.
evil, like let them go sledding.
We
What
need
are
a
you talking
snow day.
about? Yeah.
In Haines, back in Alaska, we had a superintendent of the school district who lived about 3 blocks from work. The only time he would call a snow day is if he couldn't walk in.
There you go.
And he
Yeah.
could walk in when the snow was up beyond his knees,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow.
and so when they got a snow day, I can't imagine having a snow day saying, but now you have to use Zoom.
Oh my gosh. I feel like it's just torture. Like there's something so special about, nature itself
Yeah,
stopping the workflow of things.
exactly.
Like you got to
Exactly.
appreciate that and live with it. So I'm happy our schools around here. I mean, they let the kids have a snow day and people go out and they make their
Yeah.
snowmen and have their hot chocolate. I'm like, they need those memories.
That's part of going to school.
Yeah,
The break is just as much a part of school as school is,
exactly.
and you
Yeah.
need that. So before we get on, we're going to talk about this whole AI Taylor Swift issue in a moment, which I think is something interesting. But I just want to
Mhm.
remind you what we're doing here: collecting money. We need 720 measly dollars. I guess those are dollars that are infected with measles. We need those to get to the $2,000 needed for the truck and customs money. That's all. We're almost there. And then the last 2,000 is for my plane tickets. It'd be terrible to get all of this money and then not be able to get there to deal with it. And no, I'm going to get there. So, but anyway, the links are below for PayPal, GoFundMe if you want to be generous and need a tax deductible receipt because you were going to need a tax deductible receipt anyway. Or if you're coming from a country that's kind of, I mean, in Georgia, PayPal doesn't work that much, but I did have someone use GoFundMe. So I said, oh, that's good to know. Okay, so let's discuss what's going on. Why don't you tell them what you know? I know some stuff, but we'll go ahead.
I will say that I've purposefully not looked into the topic too much because there's something about the nitty-gritty details of this AI tech coming out that I kind of want to keep myself in the dark about a little bit
You want to stay naive.
for my soul.
Yeah.
Because I know the internet is it can be such an evil place, and I even think you know, that posting your children online is something that is scary to me.
Mhm.
Just even sharing photos on like a private Facebook account or private Instagram. There's
Mhm.
something about that once it's out there, it's never coming back. And so I'm
Right.
fearful of that idea. But the general topic I wanted to ask you about was the fact that there are people online making these AI images of Taylor Swift in basically pornographic
Right.
situations, and I'm sure there's probably photos and videos, and then these are being passed around online, and God knows what is happening with them with the population. And it just seems like this weird mob mentality, like feasting on a person and like the image of the person, and
Well,
just
did you hear how many people saw the images through the link on YouTube on Twitter
I
X?
don't know.
27 million.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't even
Yeah.
imagine what she would feel like knowing this. Now,
Yeah.
here's the thing: there have been for years and years now people who would, in a sense, digitally cut and paste faces on porn actors.
Yes, and that I've known about,
Yeah, and
but
the truth is, though, and I realized this a long time ago in my novel, The Five Masters of Reality, which I need to get published. I saw that even then I have someone say, "Don't you realize what your high school yearbook is going to become when it goes
oh,
digital?"
oh my gosh.
And where is that line?
Oh my
You know, what
gosh.
what happens when two teenagers
Yeah.
decide to, either play jokes or, I mean, I remember when I met the first. It was a young woman that I knew, and she had left our town, and she was living in Juneau, and she was kind of feeling bad, so she can kind of confess to me that she was sending pictures of herself to someone she had met online who she liked. And I just
Mm,
said, don't do that. And,
yeah,
she was sending, shall we say, titillating pictures.
sure.
And I said, don't do that.
Mhm.
This is not. this what's going on here? When people, people seem to think this is just going to stay in the realm of no one will ever see this. And
Or they even know and they're not fearful of it because they can't take it to the full like fruition of the idea of here's what it could become. They just shove that off, even though
right,
they might know it in the background. Because I grew up when Snapchat was invented. That
right,
was invented when I was in middle school.
right,
It's an application where you send photos to people and they disappear, right? So there's this, oh, it's never coming back.
right.
But as a child, especially in middle school, you're not thinking through the fact that it's like, this is data that I'm adding to something out there in order to send to the other person. And it doesn't mean just because the person can't see the copy of this photo anymore that it's gone, right?
Hmm.
Like we
Hmm.
never think about, oh, this is just a throwaway thing. People say a throwaway account, right?
Right.
Online. It's like nothing is throwaway online. None of it is until the whole thing burns to the ground. It's there forever. Just assume it is because it
Hmm.
could be, you know? And so I even had instances in my high school where, photos were shared of underage people, right? Because they're all kids and these photos are taken and there's relationships and things are being passed around. And it's just, it's getting way even darker than what I lived, which already was dark enough, you know?
Right, right. Well, we've moved out of the what should we call it? The Photoshop era,
Yeah.
out of the just simply editing videos and pasting faces on things and blending them in to make them look into a very different scenario. Here's the thing: most of the standard um, AI programs out there are very specific about what you can and can't show.
Hmm.
That is to say, you can't go, give me a pornographic image of Taylor Swift. Two things will pop up immediately from most of the reputable AI programs. One will be, we can't do Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
And the other will be, although you can coax them into it, it depends
Yeah.
on the thing. The other will be, we can't do the pornographic image.
Yeah.
Now, you can then find other ways to describe it because you're always using prompts.
I've seen these logic lines where people go around whatever barricade they run into.
Right,
Like I've seen even someone was using it was like probably put out by Honda, like for AI car maintenance. And they used it to write code for their website.
right.
It's like you work around the thing until you can get it to work for you. It's like this weird, it's a conjuring,
Yeah.
It's divination and something
Well, what's
about it is
happened is
ugh.
the barriers that they thought they had put up are not really there.
Yeah.
And so people are, I mean, over in the world of pornographic imagery,
Mhm.
the gates are coming down as quick as possible because of course that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Now the sad thing is, so like I was saying, how many digital images are there of people, all over the internet?
Sure.
And, let's say, I can see someone taking an image of someone they know and turning them into that, not just celebrities, but
Sure.
any image and doing whatever you want. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, here's what really freaked me out. Someone just shared on Facebook with me a a simple little thing. It's kind of fun. It's like a filter for your face. So you give it a picture of yourself or a picture of someone else, and you say, what would I look like in the 1930s? What would
Hmm.
I look like in the Roman Empire? What would I
Yeah.
look like if I was a fashion model? What would I look like if I was in the Wild West?
Mhm.
You give them those images and then they give them back. So I tested it with myself. I tested it with a couple of other faces.
Mhm.
But here's the thing, it wasn't simply that they would take my face and put it onto something.
Sure,
They
yeah.
took my face and then changed it in a
Mhm.
way to fit that era or thing.
Yeah.
But here's the weird thing, they didn't need side shots of me anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
They
It's
had
very
the image
impressive.
turned on the side. They could already, the software is already so good, they can already
Yeah,
guess
they
what
can
the facial.
determine depth based upon shadow. I was actually investigating some AI stuff that would take a flat photograph and turn it into a 3D model for you. by
Mhm.
estimating depth based upon shadows,
Mhm.
contrasts, in the photo. And it,
Yeah,
it was amazing what it can do. I
right.
think it's just, I don't know. I just wonder, like, how do we, as people who recognize this is extremely dangerous, what are we doing? How do you just combat it, I guess, every day in your own life?
Well,
You know,
here's one thing that I keep in mind. Now, I've in an artistic way, I've played with some of these AI programs, and I continue to because I want to understand what's going on.
hmm,
And so one thing I've realized is the AI imagery is much better at darker imagery than it is at good imagery.
I'm
What
not
it does,
surprised.
and the reason is because you can make something, you can really screw something up much better than you can make it good.
Sure.
And this is just the general principle of things. It's much harder to do good than it is to simply do evil. Evil is just like coasting,
Yeah.
but good takes will.
It's like
And
the building a tower versus knocking it down. Takes time and effort. Just one simple destruction, it's obliterated. One
right,
simple knock of the boulder
right.
and it's gone.
But here's the thing. You remember, now you're a lot younger than me, so you've always been around digital imagery in
Basically,
movies,
yeah.
CGI stuff. I remember when we first saw things like Terminator 2 or James Cameron's The Abyss, and then later Jurassic Park, and then later Lord of the Rings, and these were all moving up the line towards new heights of digital CGI imagery.
Hmm.
Now, some of those still work because they blended them in with real world imagery.
Sure.
But if you start looking at things that started happening later, after a while, most of us get pretty good at guessing that, oh, that's a CGI thing in a
Yeah.
movie. And you can tell when it's too much, and you can tell when it's bad CGI, and you can say that, oh, well, that's ridiculous,
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. We become good at that. That's also what's going to happen to us with AI. We're going to have to just ramp our game up to know, oh, well, that's fake.
Yeah.
Like right now, Paul Vanderklay has little AI images he uses, and it's just like I can just smell the AI a
I
mile.
know all his thumbnails, and I love Paul, but I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, he's experimenting with it. But the point is this: what it is AI is like an aggregator.
hmm,
So, for instance, right now there are millions of images, but if you think in terms of movie stars or musicians or something. There are millions of images of, say, Angelina Jolie,
sure.
right? But some new star who has just come out and maybe she's pretty herself, there's not that many images. Maybe there's 1,000 images or a couple hundred images that. So when they go to to collect an image of Angelina Jolie, they can get much closer because there's so many images.
Hmm,
And so
yeah.
what the AI does is goes through and collects the images and then creates something out of that.
Yeah, sure.
But it doesn't understand what it doesn't have a lot of imagery for, and it's much harder to get it uh, to do what you'd like it to do.
Hmm.
Eventually, I think, like I said, what the thing that got me about this program I saw was that it was it was actually able to take from just a straight photograph and already guess the shape of the face, which is quite difficult.
Yeah, there's a program I'm familiar with that's with voice. It will take one sample, and from one sample, it can make a voice model.
Well, that's the thing.
Whereas, yeah, previously you'd have to load in, like you're saying, a lot of different images. So you'd have to say a lot of different types of words, make a recording, load it into it, and then it could build a, semi good model of your
Hmm.
voice. But
Hmm.
the newer ones now, I mean, it's like upload a 1 minute sample
Oh
of
yeah.
your
Oh yeah.
voice, and it's
Exactly.
great.
And here's the weird thing about that. I'm now watching YouTube videos,
Mm,
and they're often short videos where someone says, uh, the top 10 reasons you should visit,
Sure. Yeah.
Paris,
Yeah.
and I'm listening to it and I'm going like, that's not a real human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can tell there'll be some weird little thing wrong with it. And I think we will become more attuned to that. Now, it's going to be different with sound than it is with image, than it is with writing. But it is opening a lot of doors. So my feeling is, I don't like Elon Musk's idea of the Neuralink and putting something in your head. It's just like,
Yeah.
sorry, that's just making the problem worse.
Chip in the brain. Yeah, I'm not on that team.
We need more visual smarts. And I think that's what we need. So let's see. Before we go on here,
Sure.
yes, we are collecting money. Yes. I've gotten up to $9,220. No, yeah, 9,200. Oh, sorry, $80. So that means we need $720 to finish the $2,000 that I need for the truck and the train and the customs money. And then I've just got the plane ticket. So it's 2,200. I need $2,720. So if you're out there and you're on the fence, this is a good time to support it. I'm going to be here a while longer talking with Laura about stuff, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to connect with people, but I'm here also to try to raise the money, and I have a January 31st deadline. And I really, I have to get this, the $10,000 as soon as possible. So we're close, $750. Guess what? I'll be back tomorrow. So, because the nice thing for you folks is when you turn this off, you're like, great. And when I turn it off, I'm like, oh no, okay. Sometimes the thing is, these fundraisers they start off, they ramp up, you get excited, they kind of hit a peak, they plateau for a while.
Yep.
And then you go into a valley about the 3/4 point, which I've already hit that valley. And then it starts to ramp up again, especially as people start getting invested in, is Burn going to make it?
You're close now, though. You're like on the final stretch.
Yeah. Well, you were here when it was near the beginning, kind of.
Yeah.
And you probably said, oh, I hope Burn gets it. Good luck, Burn.
I've been tuning in here and there,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I like having someone to talk to on these things.
Yeah, it's
because good. I mean, I can obviously talk and talk and talk. And I
have a lot to say.
Yeah, well, also, although part of me says, oh, I should have prepared more to say this or that or the other thing. And other times I go like, oh, this is just going to be a quick video and it'll come, it'll go. It's not going to be so. Let me play a little bit of music, then we'll come back and do some more. Okay,
Right.
so I'm going to give you a choice between a Georgian piece of music, a Polish piece of music, or another kind of American Gothic piece of music.
I'm going with the Georgians.
Okay. So I'm going to play you a piece called Harumi, and Harumi is a dance that is done by men in Georgia, and it involves getting in a line, and then they do some kind of steps, and sometimes they do a circle. And some of the versions I've seen, they get in a pyramid, and then they will look out. And I think that many of these Georgian dances, particularly the ones men would do, were dances they would do before battles and war, because they would use them to look out. But they're also doing them to build camaraderie and such. And Georgia has had an awful lot of invasions over the years.
Yeah.
So let's listen to this. It's about 3 minutes long. We'll be back. And remember wherever we are.
Okay.
Here is Harumi, just a folk group on a stage in Georgia. And PayPal, GoFundMe below. Think about it. There you are. There are versions of that I've put into the music files that have a lot more musicality to them. That one's a pretty primitive version. That's a very primitive Georgian bagpipe there.
I was wondering what that instrument might be called. It seemed like bagpipe-esque,
Yeah,
but
well, a lot of people will hear the word bagpipe, and I think in America you find this all the time. They'll immediately think Scotland. If they know a little more, they'll say Ireland. But in fact, there are bagpipes going from Ireland all the way across towards India. I don't think there are
yeah,
any in China, but they go that far that way, and then they go down. There are bagpipes in below the Sahara in Africa as well.
yeah. I
So it's a
mean, pretty easy instrument to make if you've
yeah,
got an animal around, you know?
right. And once you figure out that you can fill it with air, and
Mhm.
someone will say like they'll hear a sound coming from, they go like, hey, wait a minute.
Mhm.
Plus, if you see anybody else in another culture that has one, you immediately go, well, we can do that. We've got goats, we got sheep, we've got
Yep.
armadillos. We can do this.
Mhm.
So so yeah. Well, the whole thing is with we were talking about the images of Taylor Swift and such. We're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah. The second point I was gonna bring up, just to see, I don't know, what your take is on it, is, how is this going to affect um the childhoods of kids growing up nowadays? Because someone made a comment here that, hate to break it to you, but there's porn of every celebrity online. Of
Right,
course, absolutely understand that, but the change in this is that it can be generated, and like you said, it's not Photoshop anymore.
right.
And the worry with that is like a combination of what I was talking about before with Snapchat and people taking photographs and sharing them with one another when they're in their 13-year-old love,
Hmm.
and what happens with those images when the person who's received them or wants to get back at the previous lover or whatnot, um runs that through something like an AI generator, and then
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
serious concern for, like, schools
Revenge.
and
Yeah,
and teachers, because there's already, I mean, revenge porn already exists
exactly.
as a huge problem, but this is, like,
This
this
is
is going
different
even further than that.
because a lot of that has to do with, why would people film themselves having sex? Well, they do. And
Yeah.
then later, after the relationship is over, because obviously it's going to be,
Yeah.
then they use this as a means of getting revenge.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this question, and I'm coming around to a point.
Sure.
So you're young enough that your childhood is radically different than mine. How much time did you spend outdoors?
I would say quite a lot of time outdoors, like, all summer long.
Mhm.
I grew up
That's
in a
good.
neighborhood where I had friends that lived around the corner, and so I could just leave the house.
Right. What size of community was it?
I mean, I grew up in Metro Detroit, so
Okay.
outside of the city of Detroit.
Okay.
Um, but the colonial style houses all pretty close together, pretty populated area.
Nice.
Like, I grew up in a city with almost 300,000 people.
Well, did you spend much time online?
I mean, as soon as I had access to our family's computer, yes, for
When
sure.
what age did you get access to that?
Probably middle school, I would say.
Right.
I saved up money and bought my own laptop in 8th grade,
What
but
year? Yeah.
this would be like 2012.
Okay, that's just about when the dam is about to break. Well, it's when did you get your first smartphone?
So my parents were pretty strict about that. I got it when I graduated high school.
Nice, nice. That's the
So,
thing people don't realize is that people we have a tendency, and the same tendency happened with television. And televisions used to not be as big as they are now. And
mhm,
so it's a small device, and you say to yourself, I am bigger than the device.
yeah,
Therefore, it's just a little thing. And of
Mhm.
course, the smartphone really feeds into that,
Yeah.
and or the laptop or the iPad or whatever. Um, so what people tend to have started doing, who haven't thought about it, you see, you were blessed with parents who understood there had to be some rules.
Yeah, I mean, I was still surrounded by
Oh yeah,
friends, you
and
know,
your
and
friends, exactly. You
yeah, and I
couldn't
still had
escape.
the internet because I had a computer. So
Right,
I was still very much online, you know,
right,
and I made a YouTube channel in 2013.
right.
So
Were your parents worried about you being abducted outside and that sort of thing?
I mean, I guess somewhat. I mean, my mom's always gonna be concerned, you know. I feel
Right.
like moms
See,
fear for their
when I was
child's
a kid,
safety.
I would just come home when the sun went down.
Yeah, no, I definitely had to tell them where I was.
Well, I would tell my mother, but
Yeah.
the neighborhood was safe, you
Yeah.
know,
I
and
I would
and
say
I could go play at I'd say I'm at the playground,
mhm.
and maybe I'd be playing hide and go seek with my friends, and we,
Yeah.
do all sorts of crazy stuff. Or I'd go hiking through the hills. At this point in this Californian suburb, there were still empty spots in the hills, and we go
Mhm.
hiking through them. Now, if you go to the same place, there are very few empty spots left
Yeah.
because it's overdeveloped.
Yeah.
But the point is that I was just listening to a woman. Her last name is O'Malley. I want to say Sheila O'Malley, but I know it was O'Malley. But it was on the podcast Trigonometry. Uh,
Okay, yeah.
and she is a child psychologist, and she was saying some really radical things have been happening as a result of parents essentially allowing their children to spend far too much time at a very young age with these screens.
Oh, yeah. I would believe her. You know, I volunteer with kids in this community and it's insane.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So, yeah, and many people are saying the children who are now in primary school
mhm.
are going to be radically different even than the two generations before them,
Yeah.
because they are going to and so many of the parents now, you have millennials who are having children,
Mhm.
and they their kind of their general tone seems to be like, it's all right, I turned out okay, whatever okay means.
Yeah, sure.
And but if you don't have connection to actual living human beings, for instance, if you don't know how to resolve arguments.
Yeah. There's a
She
lot of
was telling a
social
story that there was a girl who was like about 12, 13 right now,
mhm.
and that she lived near about two or three doors down away from her friend,
Mhm.
and that if they were in the same room, they would just kind of be quiet and wouldn't talk much to each other. But as
Hmm.
soon as they left, they would suddenly be texting online to each other three doors away. And
Interesting.
what would happen is during the um, during the nights, they would send all their darkest texts about what they were afraid about themselves to each other.
Oh my
Then
goodness.
the next day, they would meet each other in school, and they'd be, whatever they said at night almost didn't occur anymore, and they would never talk about it. And then they were super like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" at school.
Yeah, there's a lot of living in the head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it just seems so. Now you add to this, we've created this weird world. Now there are
Mhm.
some people who say, "Well, the world was always a fiction." And I'm going like, no, the world wasn't always a fiction. I mean,
Mhm.
I am old enough to remember a world that was a whole lot less fictitious than it is now.
Yeah.
And I think that what's happened is our technology has created this strange illusion.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
and yet the illusion has teeth, as I'm sure Taylor Swift found out just
It's like
recently.
the looking glass or something. You know, there's I really think what's funny about it all is there's like a mystic quality or whatever
Oh, absolutely.
with the phone and the internet, and it's so funny because, you know, the people who are in tech or science as a broad category are generally the very, what would you call it, left brain,
Hmm.
organized sort of thought. Ah, yes, let's figure this out logically. And then at the end of the day, it comes down to this really, I don't know, randomized, obscure thing that everybody has their little hand in, which is this whole internet culture going on. And it's like, it's changing and it's forming, and it just feels like a big boulder that's collecting bits of dirt and trees as it's rolling down this hill, and it's just going to destroy something. I
Yeah,
just
well, one of the things I discovered recently, I know a lot about the history of puppetry and history of masks and different kinds of illusions and techniques. A lot about the automatons, and there was a lot of these automata back in the late 18th century. People became fascinated with these machines. You would wind up.
have yeah, have you ever heard of the House on the Rock?
No.
It is a very strange place that's actually not far from where I live in here in Wisconsin, that was built by a man fascinated with automatons. And
Hmm.
it's this strange, I don't know, archaeological phenomena, because it's this kind of poorly built house, I would say, with
Yeah.
that just has additions and additions, and it is full of all of these automated um little scenes and machinery. And I went there for the first time this past year, and I thought, wow, this is so strange. This man had a fascination with these things, but they were the type of thing where you put in a coin. Kind of reminded me of like um Coney Island or something, like the early zoetropes and things like that. You put
Right.
a coin inside of it, and then sometimes like a little play will happen. There's little puppets on metal spikes, and they walk through a room and show some imagery. And for whatever reason, this random guy, his name's Alex Jordan, was
Right.
obsessed with these things and collected them from all over the place. Like there's some what are they called? Calliopes or
Mhm.
calliope.
5 piece, right.
Yeah, there's some of them inside of there, and you put a coin in, and you hear them play this big, John Philip Sousa type music, and it's a fascinating place. It's very strange though. I felt very weird walking through there. And then he has a
Right.
whole room full of like cavalry and angels. It's kind of like Revelation in this one room, and the four horsemen of the apocalypse are just up on the ceiling, like
That's
full
pretty amazing.
full
But it
body
sounds like he was
things.
kind of a religious guy.
What's strange is he was very much not a religious guy who was obsessed with religious art, possibly, and
Mhm.
the
But
symbolism.
also these mechanical little devices and such.
Yes. Yeah,
But here
like there's a section of it that's very akin to Dante's Inferno. Like it's
yeah,
hell when you
see?
walk in.
So here's what I've learned recently. And I have these books. I buy books on puppets. I don't read them the second I buy them, but I was just looking at one recently, and it took me back to the origins of puppets in Europe. Now, the puppets come from other cultures earlier than that, but in Europe, a lot of these images started in Egypt,
Whoa.
and they started off not as puppets. They started off as automatons.
Hmm.
And so, but they're very primitive by our lights, but they still had gears and things in them and little strings you would pull, and they would use them in parades as their gods. And
Wow. Wow.
and so what the Greeks did was the Greeks said, "Oh, we like the mechanisms," and they
Yeah.
took them and they started making secular puppets out of them. The
Mhm.
Greeks were more secular minded than the
Sure.
Egyptians.
Yeah.
But it suddenly occurred to me because I know a lot about all the rest of it. And
Mhm.
here's the interesting thing: the automaton and the puppet kind of go along with each other, along with the doll. But then you come to this point at the late 18th century, the 1780s and 90s, where people start making the most complex automaton imaginable.
Mhm.
And they use a certain little device inside of it, similar to clocks. And in fact, it was clockmakers making these.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it's called the barrel and pin mechanism. So it's like you turn it, and you probably opened up a music box and seen these
Hmm.
little teeth and such. So you
Yeah,
turn, and that's what makes them work, except it's much more complex than that.
sure. Yeah, it's like a trigger.
Right. And that goes into the history of computers.
Yeah, because
So
a
that
spinning disc. I totally see the through line.
so the computers are the and the automaton are the ancestors of the computer.
Sure. Yeah.
We are now living in the age of the computer, so that essentially AI is a kind of an automaton.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, the temptation is to worship these things.
Hmm.
And so I see not just all this weird imagery being made, but I see religions being made out of
Of
this.
course. Yeah. Well,
Just as, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say we're already having the worship of the like selfie, right?
Hmm.
Self-image, because
Hmm.
that's what's caused this big, I would say, identity crisis
Right,
in younger people. It's all about the image of who you are.
right.
Someone sees themselves in the video on the Instagram page and says, yeah, I don't think this gender particularly fits me. And then they have to change to try and, turn into the vision of whatever they think they should be.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, that's exactly along the same lines,
Yeah.
you know?
And here's the thing. Look at the way people are talking about AI now.
Hmm,
Just the tone of the discussion. There is an awe about it. There
definitely.
is a sense of like, oh my goodness, we've built something greater than us.
Hmm.
There's almost this reverence bordering on fear, like it's
Yeah.
the fear of God. You
Yeah.
see?
Wow.
And then there are people who have already started to form relationships with these. Because I
Oh,
think
yeah. That's
the,
the
the
crime.
goal is not to simply make pornographic images
Hmm.
any more than the goal of people looking at pornography is to look at pornography. The
Hmm.
goal is really to find some sort of meaning in that, in these
Mm,
faces, in these images. Now, of course,
mhm.
we then take it down to the dirt and rub our noses in this the worst imagery possible. And yet I'm convinced what's going on with most people, I think everything is a search for meaning. And so I think that what the computer generated world is bringing us to will be some sort of like techno pagan religion or something. And
I think that's gotta be what it comes to.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I think, well, there's already one religion, you know, of certain variety that is like alive and well, as far as I'm concerned, which is this whole, the Rainbow Coalition or whatnot, as we say.
sure,
Like that's
sure.
definitely a religion
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Because the language that's used, the holiday that's celebrated,
Hmm.
in the month of June, it's like that is a religion. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Exactly.
definitely going
But
on.
here's the thing is it's also a religion that believes in transcending the flesh.
Absolutely, because that's like the final form, right?
Right, right.
That's what it's all leading to at the end of the day. I can be anything, I'm just an idea.
But then there's another weird thing about all of this. So all of this stuff is being created. Now, the effect of a lot of it is to keep us from going out into the world and keep us constantly distracted.
Yes, absolutely.
And so what happens when this stuff we've created becomes so involving that we don't want to leave the house?
Mm.
And then
Well,
here's the next question is, how do you make money then? How do you pay for anything? Because you no
you don't.
longer, you know, so there's weird things coming down the road. But, people will often ask me, and I'm going to take a break in a minute here. People
Sure.
will often ask me, so do you think we're heading into this totalitarian blah, 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 blah? And I'm saying, like, no, there are different possibilities.
Mhm.
And one isn't necessarily going to happen exactly like anything. And
Yeah.
whatever happens, it's not going to be like we've been writing it down. It's just like Jesus says, no man knows the day. Well, no one knows what the future will be. I
Mhm.
don't think when people invented smartphones, they were imagining the world we live in now, or when they were inventing just the cell phone, you know.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I actually am putting more money down on chaos. And so I think there will be pockets where people are completely inside the machine. And then there will be pockets that are like road warrior. Like if
Yeah.
you go around the world right now, Somalia is road warrior.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Eritrea is road warrior. Yemen is looking a lot like road warrior. Eastern Ukraine is feeling like road warrior.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's feeling like an apocalyptic scenario that just can't stop. You
Yeah.
know, and you look at, for instance, you know, then there's things like the fact that these things we tap into happen so much inside of our heads
Yeah.
that they just cause us to kind of explode, but then the emotion comes out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm sure people down in the southern half of the Americas are saying to themselves, we have to get across the border before the next president comes in, creating the problem we're now facing with this weird Texas and
Yeah.
standoff with the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Biden and his administration is totally afraid to say the normal thing. You know, people should just line up and get come in legally. You know, they're afraid to say the most obvious thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's creating this weird tension,
Yeah.
and people start mentioning civil war and all this stuff. No one knows because the effects are too broad. You know, in the same day we're thinking about civil wars, we're thinking about AI.
Mm-hmm.
Literally the same day we're thinking about chaos of physical people, too many people, literally millions of people crossing the border in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We're also thinking about AI. Those are two very different kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's where we are. We're in
Yeah.
a place so that we are at this point in history, things are far more fluid than they have been for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is to say, anybody who would dare to say what the world will be like, say by 2030, is probably going to be wrong.
Yeah.
So, feeling though is the good news there is that in that fluidity, we have more of a chance of doing something new.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that there has been somewhat of a little bit of a revival, I feel like, of people turning back to God. You
Yeah,
know, I've seen that in quite a few young people, you know, of my generation who did the classic thing, go off to school, kind of break apart from the church for a bit, and then come back, you know, more
right,
zealous than ever.
right. But
So,
also, I think that many of um, the things that we used for the last like 20, 30 years to kind of make sense of things are
mhm,
not helping at the moment. But that
yeah,
means we have to find out, where did we go wrong?
sure,
And I think some people are thinking that way now.
yeah,
And I see a movement towards more of a kind of dialogue in what might be called the radical center. The people who are saying, no, 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 it's okay to listen to people you disagree with. It's okay to have a conversation.
yeah. And even amongst, like you were saying, the millennials giving their children iPads and whatever, obsession with tech, I've also seen a movement with younger parents now saying, no tech, no
Yeah.
TV time. We're not doing this. You know, we're doing arts and crafts every day for this period of time, and that's our fun time or whatever.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know, making different rules for their households. And I think that that will have a really positive effect,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Well, so lots more catastrophes in the future, and get ready. We're going to see some crazy stuff.
I know, Year of the Dragon. Let's
Yeah.
go.
But also I think there's room for hope. The last time I felt this much hope was in the 1970s, which was also a completely dark decade.
Hmm.
And the reason I saw that's the period when Christians were starting to look at the past again and ask questions about Christian history. And so many ideas were being formed that would later go on, and sometimes just crazy stuff,
Yeah.
would go on. But nevertheless, it was a time, I mean, that's when Francis Schaeffer's L'Abri was doing its key central seminal work. That's when the Jesus movement was happening. That's when people were starting to look back at Christian texts and such. So even though, if you look at the same period from another side, it's like, whoa, so dark.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that was going on. Nevertheless, out of that came a different emphasis. And I think that's where we are too, in many different ways.
Yeah.
So,
It's also my favorite decade of music. So something was going on in that world in the 70s for sure.
yeah. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And that's how I look at now. Although now the actual, what can you say, the tenor of the times is very different. We're much closer. I often think, and I've thought this for quite a long time, since at least the 90s, that the 20th century was the darkest century of all. We lost, I mean, by some estimates, 70 million people in World War II alone.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of people died through communism. Hundreds of millions of people died in civil wars. And then there was World War I. Calamity after calamity. And then the whole world started changing on its axis in the 1960s, so that ideas that used to seem to have some meaning ceased to have meaning. And people had to start, what now? But then I thought about Greek plays and you'd have the Greek tragedy, but the Greek tragedy was usually surrounded by a comedy. And I think we are in the farcical version of the 20th century. For instance, there's no great leaders right now.
Yeah, it's clown world.
Yeah. And, and as a result, we can see lots of deaths, but hardly anyone takes it seriously. People are propaganda infests people's minds. So do all the weird images. I often think it's one person's selfie wanting likes from another person's selfie.
Yeah.
What have we become? I don't think ultimately it is a farce, but I think that there is a tendency that we are in the farce version of things for a while.
Yeah. It's like the overexposure too. I mean, at least that's what my problem is with so much media. I think maybe the first time I wrote to you, I said something along the lines of like, it's hard to believe 9/11 is real or something like that. Cause it's like, it's when someone tells you memories of your childhood and you only have the memory of them telling you or the photograph of the moment.
Well, that's how World War II was to me. Because I was born in 1955, and I'd always heard about World War II. And for some reason, it seemed like it was 100 years earlier than me.
Yeah.
And yet, it was only 10 years earlier.
Yeah, you feel so distant from it.
Yeah. But eventually, then I started to make sense out of things as a result of realizing, oh my goodness, I was born right after this, like, crater in the center of history.
Yeah. Seriously.
Let me remind everyone what we're doing here. I'm glad some people are out there enjoying the conversation, I hope. And we are trying to raise money for to get my library across the seas from Alaska to Tbilisi, Georgia, in the middle of the Caucasus Mountains. Do you know where the Caucasus Mountains are? Have you looked at those on a map? You should. And anyway, we're getting closer. And I have a January 31st deadline for very practical reasons because I need to get my plane tickets as soon as possible. So I have $2,280, no, $2,780, $2,720 to go to get that amount. If I can get to 10,000 of the $12,000 total, I will go ahead and buy my plane tickets. But until I get there, I'm just not going to gamble. But I think I can get the other 2,000. But help me. Can you do that? And let's listen to a little bit more music. Remember, Georgian music files, if you give 50 or 100, you'll get 50 files or 100 files or more. And let's listen to a bit of Polish music. This is the Warsaw Village Band, who this is from the aughts and became one of my favorite groups at the time, doing a revived version of old Polish mountain music, mountain folk music. So this is the Warsaw Village Band. We'll be back after that with a bit more conversation. And as it's 1:30 in the morning for me here in Tbilisi, Georgia. Okay. I really love their music. I have about 4 or 5 of their albums. And when I went to Poland for the first time in 2005, I already had the first album I discovered by them. I think it was called The People's Spring. But then I got to Warsaw and I said, I wonder if there's any more. Actually, I was in Krakow. And so I started looking, and then it occurred to me, oh, it's probably not called the same thing in Polish as it is in English. And sure enough, it was something like Warszawy, the Kapeli, or something like that. And so I bought 2 albums with Polish titles, and I was so proud of myself for finding it. And yeah. But so I'm not going to stick around too much longer here. Maybe another 10 minutes or so.
Sure.
It is getting late, but I'm enjoying talking.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground on this topic. It's been interesting.
Yeah. And I think that, well, put this in your mind. Keep me in your thoughts and prayers. Got to get this final thing. And yeah, I just have to keep coming back and coming back. As I've told people before, what I learned doing fundraisers on the radio in Alaska was that if you don't tell anybody, they won't do anything. So you have to kind of keep pestering them.
Yeah.
And then eventually they give. And especially right now, I'm getting to the point where I know, okay, let's do this and try to do this. So I am coming back tomorrow, probably about 10 or 11 at night. I haven't decided yet, and go for a couple hours. So maybe I'll be around. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. It all depends. It all depends on what happens. It's Sunday, so I have to come as late as possible because I know there'll be people going to church. But of course, I'm dealing with people in Europe and other places too. And yeah, so I came. Yesterday I came earlier than usual, and that actually seemed to work. So I'm thinking I'll do that again. Maybe Monday I'll come like 5-6 hours earlier than this and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Laura, do you have any last thoughts before I say farewell to you?
I think that's about it. Really enjoyed having this conversation. Kind of like covering, things that are in the know or being talked about currently, and it's interesting to get your perspective on things.
Yeah. Well, all I know is that it's interesting being this far away from America.
Yeah, you're like a
this
viewer.
far away from Western Europe, because it all seems very different here. And a lot of people, when I try to explain to people what's going on there, they're like a lot of the people here say, I just want to go to New York City. And I try to explain to them, you don't make enough in a year to afford a New York City apartment for a month.
Yeah. Wow. It's unfortunately true.
Yeah.
I actually have one thing to say just on that topic of being away from America. I think you said something in the past, or I remember some video where you spoke about it, or maybe our conversation, where you felt like Georgia was in the 90s, like you're in a different time period. And I was going to say that I've also felt that when I was in Ireland recently, because I have family over there.
Right.
And there's something about being in America that makes you feel almost like you're in the center of the world stage. I don't know if that's America's ego, coming out.
Probably is, yeah.
Yeah. But when you're in another place and then like an outsider looking in and hearing people's perspectives, it's worth a lot. And so I think it's kind of fun to have these chats with you and hear what it's like, as an outside viewer who still is, from America, just seeing what's going on, because I don't know, things feel very negative right now. We need a little brightness.
Exactly. Well, one of the big differences between America and everywhere else in the world is that we generally don't look at the rest of the world.
Yeah.
We have enough going on in our country, especially if you're in the middle of it like you are.
Yeah.
There's enough, well, you can kind of look at Canada, but they don't really count. And they're like the twee version of America, who's having a lot more politically correctness problems than we are, although we've got plenty.
Yeah.
But no, Americans can just be, because of the size of our country, we are like this massive island
Mm-hmm.
that has a lot, tons of power. So, for instance, when you're listening to music, you're listening to American music. When you're
Mm-hmm.
listening to, some British music too. Yeah. When you're watching movies, you're watching American movies and
Oh, so
television.
true. Yeah.
All the media, everything seems to be centered in America,
Yeah.
or trying to get in. If it's English or Australian or something,
Yeah.
everyone circles around America. So that means the Americans don't understand that there's the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're notorious at when we travel. And you just hear these stories of Americans traveling. I remember this one woman. She was from like South Carolina. Came to L'Abri in Switzerland.
Mm.
She was an organist at her church.
Yeah.
She went to Paris. She was allowed to play an organ, a pipe organ, at one of the biggest cathedrals.
That's
Well,
awesome.
she arrives at L'Abri with her daughter. I felt really bad for her daughter because this was like one of these Southern women you just didn't talk back to.
Uh-huh.
And but she said, I just don't see why they say Paris is so special.
That's awesome.
I had a friend who is my very dear friend Paulette, who's a puppeteer. She's French, but her mother was American, so she speaks English perfectly and
Sure.
in the proper American tone. And so briefly, she worked at Starbucks in Paris,
All
and
right.
a Starbucks,
Mm-hmm.
and she would never speak English to the people. And she would overhear them. They just thought she was just this French girl. She would overhear them talking.
Yeah.
And she would hear them walking into Starbucks saying, finally, some decent, like something decent to eat and drink here.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, dear American friends and relatives, But yeah, we just live inside this bubble, this massive, huge, thick bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, tonight I went to this philosophical thing. One of the things I love about being here is conversation is on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Friendship is on the table. I was at this thing about a week and a half ago where this guy said to me, we Georgians we're not like the kind of people who create things. We're not like the Germans always inventing new machines and stuff. We're not like the French inventing culture. Says, but you know what we value above everything? Friendship. And
that's
he says,
the best.
yeah, and that's how it feels. It feels like that, and conversation is important.
Yeah.
And I look outside at the Georgian kids. Too many of them smoke. That's one issue. But the point is this: they're outside talking to each other.
Yeah.
They're not ignoring each other, everyone on their own smartphone. I mean, they do have smartphones. They do use them too much, obviously, because everyone does. It's the nature of the smartphone.
Yeah.
But they're not out there, like 3 kids sitting on a bench all looking at their smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there talking and talking and talking.
Yeah.
And I see things like that, and I just say, wow. And tonight, I went to my friend's place, and it was in a place I'd never seen before. And Georgians have a way of hiding things, like restaurants. And this was a place called Space One. It was like some sort of, I guess it was like a club or something.
All right.
And Ben was giving a kind of a laid-back lecture at this place. And I get there, and there's about 15 people all listening to him. And but it's a really mellow environment in an old building. But the funny thing is I couldn't find the place for quite a while, and because there was no sign.
Yeah.
And I walked by this place before, and I said, "This just looks like an industrial wasteland." And I walked in, and I said, "Oh, there's a light that maybe shouldn't be there." And then I went around the corner, and I didn't see the door right away. And then I said, "Oh, that's it." And I looked totally closed. There's nothing that said there's a place here. And I went in. But as I was walking, I was just looking at the architecture on the buildings I was walking past and such. And I was saying, like, this is great, though. The ground is completely wet. from raining. It's night. I'm walking along the streets of Tbilisi. The river is on the other side. I can see it, the lights of the city and such. And I said, this is all real.
Mm-hmm.
This is a real thing. I'm looking for a real building that's hard to find.
Yeah.
I'm walking and walking, and there's something great about that. Just
So true, yeah.
The tactility of it, and how often we have these memories of places like where you got stuck waiting for something.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you just found yourself in a part of just what you thought you knew and you don't know. I mean, I know the city pretty well, and I was saying, like, I've never been here before, and yet it's not a distant place. And every now and then that'll happen. I'll turn a corner and I'll walk down. This happened the other 3 days ago. I said, oh, I've never been. Oh, I walked by this way, but I never went up this street, this little block before. And I went up there, and there was a bookstore that sold English books, and I had a really great conversation with the girl in there she was like 25 years old, and she was doing all the ordering and stuff. There was an older person there who didn't speak as much English. And I thought, like, yeah, this is what life's about.
Yeah.
These meetings of people looking at different, and discovering what you thought you knew, because you never know it completely.
Yeah.
You walk down a street, you really don't know what's in those houses.
Yeah.
Or who's in those houses, what's going on. So, yeah. So, yeah. Well, we will talk again.
All right.
And I'm going to get out of here because it's like 1:45 in the morning.
Yeah, go to bed, Bern.
And I just wanted to, you have to keep reminding people. So that's what I'm doing. And yeah, I did get another $80, which came in, which I wanted to tell everyone about. So $12,000 is the total. We've almost got the money for the truck and the customs here. The $2,000, we're $720 away from getting that. And then we need $2,000 for my plane tickets, and I'm there. But as soon as I get the 720, I'm going to go buy the tickets. And one thing I was telling people is, once I put my stuff on the barge to send it off from Haines, it's going to take about 2.5 to 3 months to get to Georgia.
Wow.
So I don't have to rush home. And if anyone wants me to show up in their neck of the woods and can throw in a little extra money to, pay for the plane landing rather than going straight home, think about that. I could do it. So 1 or 2 places in America, maybe 1 or 2 places in Europe. So there we are. Something to think about. All right, Laura, thank you again. I appreciate it. It's great to do this, having someone else. I'm going to play one more piece of music. And you know what, folks? I'm just going to be done when this piece of music is done.
Sounds like a plan.
Another piece of Georgian music. This is the Sisters Nakauri doing a piece called Spring Rain. It's kind of like rain here. It feels like spring to me by my standards, and certainly by yours too. But yeah, we'll listen to that. And remember, you could get Georgian music if you give $50 or more. So we'll leave it there.
See ya.
Good night. So.
Dabrunebus is Christus Rev, Shenit Polish Pot. שמות גומה מולדיני zamkris Miłaszeni kubili suni poti ani tomashi Savsem tvari siwi frela molodini aris Miłaszeni kubili suni poti ani tomashi Savsem tvari siwi frela molodini aris Nazam fuisi